Sorry everybody, it's Xilicks here, and welcome back to week 2 of the Elysian Draft League Power Rankings. So yeah, again, just want to reiterate that these rankings do take the last week into account, and every further week will do the same. So week 5 will take the first 4 weeks into account as well, and just like right now, week 2 is going to take week 1 into account. The only one that doesn't matter for these is the week 0 one. That was just like the post-draft one. Just reiterating that in case people forget, because some people may be like, hey, I won week 2, how come I'm not higher? Well, it's probably because you didn't play that well week 1. So yeah, keep that in mind as we go through the list, and let's start with our number 16th ranking. In the number 16 spot, we have Demonic in the Tampa Bay Rayquaza. So a few things went wrong in Demonic's battle this week. For one, the Ditto had the wrong ability. Had the Ditto had the correct ability, it could have potentially stolen stats from the setup Raikou, and that could have been interesting. He had no hazard removal versus a Webs team. Again, I really feel you need to make some trades, get some hazard removal, as well as maybe some like reliable recovery, because I think your only wall that has reliable recovery is Gastrodon. I think your team would benefit from another one. Just something to keep in mind. The Togedemaru killing Entei was pretty cool, but again, at that point, like, the game was almost already over. You lost 4-0, and then week 1 you lost 3-0. Again, had you had the proper ability on the Ditto, you could have capitalized on the Raikou setting up. Another thing that you could have done, this is kind of like a weird team prep thing, but if you see a team that has a specially attacking grass type, you can always run the Rindoberry Mirror Coat with Gastrodon. That could have been interesting versus the Vileplume. Again, just a little nitpick, not a huge thing. But yeah, you really should have had some form of getting rid of webs, or even like capitalizing on it, because the Raikou just, you know, it set up, it did what it needed to do. Then the Entei came in and it did what it needed to do, and then the Vileplume, you know, cleaned up. So it's just, keep these things in mind when you're team building. Like, if you see webs, you gotta do something about it. If you see, you know, certain threats like the Raikou, you could have like stolen the stat changes with the Ditto. I'm beating a dead horse at this point. I think at this point you should know where you need to improve, and you should definitely make the changes needed to do so. In the number 15 position, we have Yodeler. Same as last week, he kind of let his defensive mons get worn down or die. Obviously last week there was a setup Tapu Fini, so he kind of did have to let some of his defensive mons go down. But this week, you know, things like Hippowdon got worn down. The Granbull just got destroyed by Tapu Bulu. The Shaman set was pretty cool. I liked the Shaman set, but one thing to keep in mind when you're team building is, if there is such a huge threat like Tapu Bulu, and you have really nothing that can take a hit, you know, you got to think about berries. Like, you got to run some defensive berries potentially. Maybe you might want to consider dropping some of your defensive mons and picking up either some defensive mons that can abuse the sand, if that's the route you're planning on taking, or even just dropping the sand if it's not really working out for you. I think this team looks pretty good on paper, and maybe you've just had some bad matchups so far. It definitely can work out, and I foresee you going up in the rankings. It's just, if you think there are any trades that need to be made, then make sure you make them. But really, it might come down to team building and just some better playing in future matchups to see yourself at a better ranking. In the number 14 position, we have Riolu. Now, Riolu actually did win this week, so he's currently 1-0. However, his first week matchup was pretty bad. He did get 6-0'd, and this week matchup was not very impressive. There were quite a lot of misses on his side of the field. Basically, he faced Kraft. Kraft missed like 3 gunk shots. The Ludicolo would have been dead ages ago. He missed a Stone Edge. I don't think the Stone Edge towards the end mattered too much. but Ryu was able to clean up the game with Beedrill towards the end. And I'd still like to see some trades happen, you know, some more defensive mons, maybe some different rain sweeping options. Just a few things to keep in mind. And also, if we do see this team get more wins, then it will definitely climb up a lot from the number 14 position. The only reason why I have it so low right now is because I am a little bit skeptical, because while they did get a win, it wasn't the best win, and also in the previous week, they had a pretty harsh loss. So again, Riolu, if you get a big win next week, or even a decent win, you're going to see yourself in a higher position. But I have you here right now just because of the things I mentioned previously. In the number 13 position, I have Aggron. Aggron, he lost both weeks. Both weeks were very close matches, though. In this week match, if he didn't get burned with the Weavile, he probably would have killed the Alakazam. I didn't run the calc, but burn did 60%, so I imagine without the burn, he would have killed the Alakazam and won the game. That being said, all of those kills he got with Weavile at the end, I felt would have benefited him more if he got all those kills whenever more of his team was alive. Obviously, had I believe he faced Doric. Yeah, had Doric not really misplayed and switched out the Almamola to try to Wish Pass, the Weavile just, it would have died to Almamola 1v1 if he didn't take all that extra damage. Again, I didn't really run the calc, so I'm not sure how accurate that is, but had the Almamola just stayed in and clicked Scald a few times, he would have burned the Weavile eventually. And then the Alakazam could have came in after the Almamola went down, gone for a Dazzling Gleam. Basically what I'm saying is, even without the burn at the end, I'm pretty sure Doric still would have won had he played better. And the reason why that puts Aggron so low is because, like last week, I feel he wasn't in the best position to win. Obviously last week, as some people pointed out, the roll to kill the Latios with the Floatzel plus Fake Out was in Aggron's favor, but he didn't get it. Again, I still stand by what I said. He shouldn't have put himself in a position to win that relies on rolls. Obviously, there are some times in the battle where it's like, okay, this is my only win condition, I'm going to go for it. But again, with better team prep week 1, he most likely would have won the matchup. And also in week 2, I feel he lost even without the Scald Burn had Doric played better. So yeah, hopefully I made my reasoning on this clear. But yeah, Aggron has made some changes that will be in effect in the upcoming week. So hopefully that helps him out, and hopefully we see him at a better ranking in future weeks. In the number 12 position, we have Zen in the Miami Mawwiles. The past 2 videos, I had this team labeled as the South Florida Selbies. It's still coached by Zen. There wasn't a coach change or anything, just a different team name. There was some confusion because he used the South Florida Selbies as a team name before, but now he has it as the Miami Mawwiles. Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, so this week, he did lose to Farouk. Now, he did have some pretty cool sets this week. I really like this Smeargle set with the Baneful Bunker. I thought that was pretty cool, because he stopped the first Rapid Spin and got a poison off on the Delmise. I did like the double Scarf pick. Now, I imagine that Farouk did know that the Flygon was Scarfed, but I think he wanted to risk it just because he was in a position to win, even if he lost his Greninja right there, because the Flygon would have had to lock itself into something, and then he could play around whatever it was locked into. So yeah, the double Scarf was cool, didn't really work out too well though. The Arcanine set was pretty cool. I believe it was Banded Jolly, I think it is what it was. So it did speed tie the Kyurem at the end when it went down. If he was Banded Adamant, then it did not speed tie, because the Kyurem was max speed Timid. I confirmed that after the matchup. But I don't know what the speed on the Arcanine was. So if he was Banded Jolly, then it was a speed tie whenever he lost the Arcanine. And if it was Banded Adamant, then the Kyurem outsped anyways. That being said, he did kind of just allow the Kyurem to get kills once it was behind a substitute. The Z Tectonic Rage just blew away the Jirachi. He didn't really have another play though. He had to get rid of that substitute. Then the Arcanine also went down to an Earth Power. Maybe he could have had some berries to better prep for Farouk's offense, because things like the Greninja just kind of tore through. The Charizard, I think the Charizard would have been a bit better had mons like the Mawile been brought, because I believe it was a bulkier set to take on the Mawile and potentially like a physical offensive Jirachi. But yeah, all in all, I think Zen played pretty well week 1, maybe didn't play as well week 2. I do like his team building in a lot of the sets, but again, maybe some berries to better take on offense instead of running a double scarf team. Just an idea though, and also I mentioned a few things in week 1 where your prep could have improved a tiny bit, but yeah, I think your team is pretty good, and you will do better in future weeks. Maybe just had some bad matchups, but we'll see how that goes in your upcoming weeks. In the number 11 spot, we have Doric. So the reason why Doric is placed pretty low despite getting a win this week is at the end, whenever he was losing all those mons to Weavile, he should have calced and realized, hey, maybe I should just keep my Almamoa in. I understand that maybe he was trying to switch around to get better HP, if that makes sense, and maybe wish past something. I don't know the calcs. I haven't done any of them. So maybe he played the way he had to win at the end. But I think he could have preserved the differential a bit. The burn was very nice, getting that at the end, which allowed him to live the knockoff with the Alakazam and knock it out for the win. That being said, though, I think early on, the match was played very well by Doric. The Celesteela was a great pivot for things like the Tapu Lele. He wished past to it well. The Turtonator took some hits nicely. I believe he might have been AV. I think that did get knocked off, and yeah, I'm pretty sure he was AV. But he it was a good counter to like the Vikavolt. He didn't play as passively compared to last week, so I did like that improvement, which is why he went up a few rankings, but I'm still keeping him kind of low just because this match wasn't played as well as I think it could have been towards the end. Again, early on, it was a great match, and his previous week wasn't as great, which is what's keeping him a bit lower. Maybe some not really better team building, because I think his team building was pretty good, but some better playing in the actual matchups. Maybe even some trades on some of those lower tier mons if they're not helping him out that much. But yeah, I foresee him climbing up in future weeks, but again, he's down here now for the reasons I mentioned. In the number 10 spot, we have Farouk. Now, Farouk won a pretty kind of upset match versus Zen. I think a lot of people were expecting Zen to pull through on this matchup. But Farouk proved that his offense is there. He used Charizard as a defensive mon while still keeping up offensive pressure, which was great. He could have actually preserved the Charizard. However, I understand the thought process of not roosting, because if the Scrafty had the Head Smash instead of the Dragon Claw, then he would have gone down that turn when he went for Flare Blitz. However, he could have roosted instead of going for the Flare Blitz, and he could have preserved his Charizard and gotten to like +6 and won the game right there. Obviously, hindsight's 2020. And he played well with the potential of there being a head smash. So that was pretty good. Again, his offense, it was shown much better this week than last week. The bulky Zard was a great pick, as he was able to stand up against that Scrafty, despite the Scrafty probably being built to take on an offensive Charizard. It was pretty cool seeing defensive Charizard being able to not come out on top, but then allow for the Greninja to come in and get free kills. He could have played a bit around the double scarf. I understand that he left the Greninja in just in case it wasn't Scarf, because had he set up a Dragon Dance, that could have been pretty risky. If it was like a Sash set with a Dragon Dance, maybe that could have been bad. Although it wouldn't have mattered because he had the Water Shuriken, so I don't know. And the reason why I say Sash and not Yachi is because the Ice Beam definitely goes through a Yachi Berry after the Battle Bond. But yeah, the confusion hit on the Flygon didn't really matter too much towards the end, as I'm pretty sure Bronzong would have killed the Flygon at 37% HP. Again, I don't know the exact calc on that, but I know for a fact that the Bronzong would have lived a Outrage at the HP it was at, especially because it was Scarf Outrage. Other than that, the Kyurem was played pretty well, getting behind a substitute, taking out the Jirachi and the Arcanine. And yeah, that's about all I have to say about this match. The Alolan Marowak came through at the end and just kind of stood there while the Flygon hit itself. But yeah, again, good playing by Farouk this matchup, and I'm sure he's going to be climbing up once he gets his differential up a bit. In the number 9 position, I have Cubchoo. Now, Cubchoo's here for a few reasons. I didn't really like the Mew getting sacked off. No one really has a switch into Slacking, though, anyways. So, it's understandable, but maybe, like, I don't know. Slacking kind of gets walled by Protect, and that is an option in team building. Obviously, I'm pretty sure he wasn't worried about Slacking, and Mew values every single move it can pick, and taking Protect is never really something you want to do on a Mew set, but it could have been done there just to preserve the Mew. Obviously, you know, that's some really in-depth thinking, and I'm not expecting that, but just something to throw out there towards anyone else who's facing Slacking in the future. He pretty much lost once Erasmus started passing the boost into the Kingdra. But I did really like the Grumpig set as well as the Infernape set, even though they didn't get the shine to their full potential, as I'm sure that Cubchoo planned for them to. The Grumpig set really would have clutched that match had it worked, because I'm pretty sure it was kind of in place to live from the Kingdra. However, obviously he had the Critdra. If it wasn't Critdra, though, he could have like hit it with those Icy Winds to get its speed down, which would have been pretty interesting. But yeah, he's here because he did lose this week, and he almost lost week 1, which is why he is a bit lower than what he probably would have been had there been like a better performance week 1, if that makes sense. In the number 8 position, I have myself. A few things I want to say before I get to the misclick. Most of the match at the beginning was controlled by me. I was able to take out the Skarmory with the Donphan, which I feel was a misplay on Jack's behalf. I think he should have switched out the Skarmory so he could have kept up his rocks for the whole game, because as we saw, having up rocks the whole game won him the match. Now, the misclick basically cost me the match. It was either, if I didn't misclick, I either won or the differential would have been very close if he won. I was able to like 1v1 that Skarmory with the Donphan, and the rocks would have been kept away had I not misclicked, which pretty much would have allowed me to either win or better differential, as mentioned. I did kind of sack the Melodic, which was, I guess, a bit of a misplay, as it could have taken some hits from things like the Savali or whatever else and maybe pass some status around. But yeah, the reason why I feel I should be at the number 8 position is because week 1, I should have, my phone's going off. Week 1, I should have won 5-0, and I kind of threw that away. And this week, I should have most likely won with a decent differential, and even if I did lose, it would have been a close differential. So the reason why I'm here is because I haven't been playing careful enough to maintain my differential high enough. So yeah. In the number 7 position, we have Kraft. Now, Kraft did get haxed quite a bit. He did miss a few gunk shots as well as a Stone Edge, as mentioned previously. Other than, you know, run some more accurate moves in the future if you don't want to miss. I'm pretty sure Poison Jab still kills the Ludicolo. But other than that, the misplay letting the Necrozma take quite a bit of damage was pretty bad. I'm not sure how much Necrozma takes from a bug move from the Mega Beedrill, but depending on the set, he maybe could have taken one and fired back with a Psychic move, and that probably would have allowed him to win the matchup. That being said, though, Kraft has stepped down as a coach as he is busy in his IRL life or whatever other personal reasons that he has. And the new coach is Haunter, so this team is probably going to see quite a few changes in the next power rankings video, as long with a name change. Other than that, though, Haunter, who's going to be the coach for the rest of the season for this team, he's going to maintain the score that Kraft had as far as the power rankings go. So Kraft was number 7 this week, and Haunter, depending on how well he does this upcoming week, will dictate where he gets put on the power rankings based on this current set. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. In the number 6 position, I have Infinite. Now, Infinite dropped quite a few places this week, as he did kind of choke away the match by switching out Mamoswine. The other choke was not clicking Bullet Punch with the Scizor. Other than that, though, he basically won the match. As far as nitpicks go, he did allow for the webs to stick around for a bit too long. They ended up not making a huge difference, but other than that, he did play pretty well, breaking down Joey's walls and taking care of the threats like Victini by pursuit trapping it. He didn't deal with the pincer amazingly, although he did get it down and put himself in a place to win had he not misplayed. I did like forcing the pincer to take the aftermath damage as well as finishing off with an Ice Shard. But yeah, he did play very well this match up until the few misplays mentioned at the end. And in his previous match, he did play very well, which is why he's maintaining his ranking at number 6. In the number 5 spot, I have Swagzire. Now, Swagzire jumped a very large amount since last week, and I feel that's because of how well he played and prepped this week. Webs was just an absolute amazing bring. He looks at the team matchup and he sees that, okay, yeah, there's a Volcarona with, very little hazard removal, but instead of bringing rocks, he decided to bring webs. Now, that, in my opinion, was a very good decision because it allowed him to set up with things like the Raikou, it allowed him to get kills with the Entei, it allowed him to finish up the game with the Vileplume, and all around, he pretty much just controlled up the match. Other than the Ditto not having the right ability, it would have been pretty risky for him to set up with the Raikou had the Ditto had the right ability, because if the Ditto was Choice Scarfed and it copied the boost from the Raikou, it would have been at neutral speed, and had he potentially knocked out the Raikou, maybe got a crit or something weird, he could have put in a bit of work against the rest of your team with the Raikou, depending on what your set was. That being said, he didn't have the right Ditto ability, and it didn't really matter in the end. The Entei and Raikou, as said, they just came in and got kills, and it was a big improvement on team building this week versus last week, which is why I have him up so high. In the number 4 position, we have Joey. Now, we were joking about this earlier, but Joey, you really should have lost the first 2 weeks. And I do have you up here because you did end up winning both weeks. You did capitalize on the mistakes of your opponents, and I have to give credit where credit is due. That being said, for the rest of the matchup, Webs was a pretty cool bring with the Galvantula. It obviously didn't do too much in the matchup, but it did. It gave him that edge to a certain degree. I didn't really like how things like the Registeel were played and the War Turtle, they just kind of got worn down. The Victini basically just got pursuit trapped. But the Pinsir did put in quite a bit of work once it got in. It took out that Salamence, it took out the Skuntank, and did quite a bit of damage to the Mammoth Swine. That being said, I think, Joey, you need to think more about the end game, because in the two matchups you've won, they've both been 1-0s, if I'm not mistaken. And they were very close 1-0s, and they were relying on quite a lot. Like, for example, against Nick, you pretty much needed him to misplay there. And against Aggron, you were relying on him not having Ice Shard, the low damage rule on the Floatzel, and quite a few other things. Again, you have won both weeks, and if you continue to keep winning, I'm sure that you're going to see yourself in a good position for the rest of the season. But these wins have been very close, and that's definitely scary for you. You need to start thinking about that end game a bit more, as said. In the number 3 spot, we have Jack. Now, Jack played very well week 1. He did kind of control most of the match week 1, and then eventually won with the 1-0. As far as week 2 goes, I have a few nitpicks until we get to the misclick. So I didn't like that he let the Skarmory go down. I felt that after the Skarmory was down, Swallow basically won, because obviously, you know, Snorlax can take a hit, but Snorlax doesn't take on the Pangoro well. And yes, the Silvally can take on the Pangoro, but the Silvally doesn't take a hit from the Swallow. He saw the Swallow was Life Orb, he knew the set, he knew it outsped everything on his team. But yeah, just wanted to put that in there. The Silvally tech was the flying to take on things like the Venusaur and the Pangoro was pretty cool, and obviously the Greninja set was, I imagine, pretty good for this matchup. I don't know if he had the Water Shuriken or not, but that would have made it a tad bit better. The Continental Crush on the Celebi, I feel maybe he should have calced that, because I was prepared to take a Continental Crush from the Celebi. Obviously, I switched into a Psychic, which made it a little bit closer down to the wire. But had I not switched into the Psychic, had I taken that for free, he most likely would have lost his Celebi to my Rotom in a 1v1. Obviously, that's not what happened in the matchup, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, he did have a much better differential compared to week 1. Had the misclick not happened, though, I feel that he either would have lost the matchup or the differential would have been really tight if he won. I felt that he'd probably be in a 1-0, 2-0 position if he won, or he would have lost 1-0, 2-0. Again, obviously, it's hypothetical, and can't take that into account, but he did kind of put himself in that position by sacking off the Skarmory. He should have kept that alive. I know he wanted to keep rocks up, but I don't know, my play was just spamming Earthquake, and he had 2 other ground immunities readily available. So that's just my input on the matchup. But yeah, he did trade his Mimikyu away for Primarina this week. He didn't bring the Primarina, but as far as this whole drop goes, I think that Mimikyu may have been nice to stop certain setup mons, but setup isn't a huge worry for him, because he does have Fake Out on Hitmonlee, Prankster Thunderwave. He has Whirlwind with Skarmory. He has Snorlax that can take hits pretty well. So setup isn't really a huge deal for him, which is why I feel the Primarina is a bit better, because it gives him a bulkier Fairy type and a bulky Water type, which he didn't have before, because Mimikyu isn't crazy bulky, and obviously Greninja is not considered a bulky Water. But also, the Primarina can be run, especially offensive, it can be run like Assault Vest. So I think that the Primarina is going to do more work for his team overall. The only thing that I will say about it is he may need to think a little bit more when it comes to the physical side of things, just because he only really has 3 physical attackers that are pretty one-dimensional. So I imagine most teams are going to run specially defensive mons with things like Assault Vests to take this team on. So that is something that he has to worry about, as his physical offense is outshined by his special offense. Although in total, I don't think it'll be a huge issue for him as he does have defensive pivots to work around. So yeah, we'll see how he does in future weeks. In the number 2 position, we have Erasmus. Now, Erasmus brought pretty much the same Kingdra strategy as last week, where he passes focus energy and speed. He almost had the same team minus slacking. Now, the slacking set was pretty cool and effective. It's pretty rare that we see slacking work out in the league format, but other than that, again, very similar team, very similar strategy. I'd personally like to see some different sets so he doesn't become like too predictable. I'm sure he's aware of that, as you know, his team is pretty predictable the way he has brought it the past 2 weeks. But that being said, it has worked out for him, so it may not be a huge concern on his mind. As far as the trade goes, he dropped his Tornadus Therian and picked up the Latios. I think that Latios is probably a bit better than Torn for his team. And the reason for that is he still has Bird Stab with like the Landorus, even an Aerial Ace from potentially like a Banded Ninjask or a Sword Stance Ninjask. So he does have, you know, like bird options still. So he doesn't necessarily need Torn. And as far as like the coverage that Torn has with things like Dark Pulse, Knockoff, Grass Knot, you know, he can get those stabs from other mons on his team, whereas the Latios gives him a bit more utility and a fast, bulky wall. It does give him the psychic typing, which he was lacking before, and it has reliable recovery with Recover. It can also run Calm Mind. It can be offensive with Specs, Life Orb, all that jazz. So I definitely think that Latios is a better option for this team overall. And I think it'll benefit him to have both an offensive dragon and a bulky dragon. So, yeah. Coming in the number 1 position, probably not a surprise to anyone, we have Zach. So 2 weeks in a row now, he has 6-0'd his opponents. He plays Bulu well. He played Miltank very well in this matchup. He utilized his new trade, Golbat. Suicune was even doing well. Like, he played this match pretty defensively, and it worked out for him, as obviously it gave him a 6-0. His differential is very high, and if he continues to play like this, he'll probably see his way into the playoffs. Speaking of the Golbat, it was a new trade. Previously, he had the Drapion, and I think the Golbat is a bit better than the Drapion because he does lose a Toxic Spike Setter and Absorber. However, Golbat has reliable recovery, which synergizes well with the Miltank, because while the Miltank is weak to fighting, the Golbat resists it, and while the Golbat is weak to things like ice, the Miltank can resist it with the Thick Fat ability, so they cover each other's weaknesses pretty well. As far as the Dark typing goes that he loses with Drapion, it was a bit redundant with having the Absol on his team, because Absol can do things like Pursuit Trap, Sucker Punch, Knockoff better than what Drapion could do. And Golbat gives him the poison typing, obviously, that Drapion also had, and while it's used a little bit differently, I think it's going to benefit him more in the long run. I'm really liking how this team has shaped up, and I imagine that Zach is going to stay always towards the top, if not at the top of the power rankings in future weeks. Alright, so that is the conclusion of the Week 2 rankings. A couple teams moved, some teams kind of stayed in similar positions. Again, if you'd like to see yourself in a higher position, or maybe if you think that you disagree with my rankings and whatnot, again, it's my opinion. If you want to make your own rankings or whatever, you can do so in the comments down below. We can have a discussion there and whatnot. But yeah, I will see you guys next time. Okay, thanks, bye.